Hello, friends. After Plato, who gave much importance to philosophy, and Aristotle, who gave a valuable information that tragedy is the highest form of art, people ask the question as to where the beautiful poetry is. Is there a critique for poetry? Is there someone who is praising poetry? The answer for that lies in the Roman critique, Horace, Horace, who lived in the age of Emperor Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, who eulogized the value of poetry. He emphasized the fact that there should be something which should have an element of pleasure in art. So we were gifted with the greatest of all critique, the greatest of Roman critique, whose name is Horace, who mentioned that poetry should be something that we should give our attention to. It goes to say that Horace was considered, as we say about Matthew Arnold in the Victorian period, of all the critics, he was the greatest poet, and of all the poets, he was the greatest critic. So Horace was a person who mixed the elements of criticism as a critique and poetry. In total, he wrote 2 satires, 4 odes, and 3 epistles. Mind you, epistles are, if you could remember about epistolary work, it is about sending letters. Believe me, Ars Poetica, or as Quintilian has quoted it, the art of poetry is a form of epistles between father and his 2 sons. It is not a book of criticism as such, but Horace mentioned his views and extolled the virtue of poetry through the form of letters that was sent. And he himself was not a person to be sending the letter. It was a communication between a father and 2 sons. Letter to Pisos, as we all know it, or history remembers it as such. Now, to say something about Horace and his value of criticism, or his legacy as a critic, what he mentioned is that apart from the giants that we could see in Greek literature or Greek criticism as such in the form of Aristotle, he himself was also an ardent devout of Aristotle. He made some changes. He gave importance to imitation. He gave importance to the fact that seriousness of life is much important. He gave importance to the fact that art should be serious itself. But more than that, what he gave, there were some stunning revelations made by him which had an impact on the literature and generations that followed. One of the key things that he said was that there should be an element of fiction in the things that we write. He is not pointing out to the fiction or the novels that we are thinking of right now. He said the fact that there should be an element of beauty, there should be an element of charm. We should keep the readers in mind. There should be an element of pleasure in what we are seeking. Now, if we could assess the fact, pleasure is something that we could not derive at that point of time, but Horace mended his way to make us think, or to make further generations think, that pleasure is an inalienable part of criticism. So what he suggested was that it should not be sheer pleasure as such, but we should look for the things around us. We should look for the nature around us. And we should seek pleasure in the things that is charming out of it. So the writing should be passionate. He specifically did not mention that poetry should be the be-all and end-all of everything. What he said was that the writing should give out a sense of happiness, a joy, a mirth. So history remembers Horace for seeking out the new from the old. It was a beginning, actually. At that moment of time, the geography and the administration of the age in which he lived was conducive for poetry. But we could not negate the fact that literary criticism as such could not evade the contribution made by Horace in making us think in devious ways. Devious for the fact, for it's not for the negative reason that I'm saying about deviousness. It's for the positive fact that devious thinking induces in us a charm, induces in us a nurturing mind that seeks and appeals to the ordinary things around us, to the ordinary people around us. In fact, let me end this by saying that Horace was the first who said that we should mop up the images of the life that is happening around us. Of course, oratory, of course, tragedy that we had before us were mopping up of images of life. But what Horace has mentioned, that we could be imaginative in the things that we could think. We could add an element of pleasure, but he said that it should always be in proper decorum, in proper fashion. Things like these has withstood the criticism of ages, and Horace has set forth a new thought, a new thinking in which we all are indebted to. And the answer for us enjoying and the answer for us living through the ages of poetry could be first felt by the Roman critic who mentioned this in the 1st century BC. Thank you very much. I'll be coming back soon. Stay safe. Take care.